Queens came here. In 1553, Queen Mary arrived at Wanstead and met Elizabeth, who was to become Elizabeth I. And Wanstead was sold to the notorious Robert Dudley, Earl of Leicester. If you remember the film about Elizabeth, he was one of her favourites. So it was sold to him in 1578, and there's a record that she stopped at his place here for 5 days. Don't ask me what went on, I'm not sure. So we're skipping through history. In 1607, which was a couple of years after the gunpowder plots, James I spent time at Wanstead, and there's mention of it in Pepys' diary, famous diary as well. 1667, Sir Josiah Childs purchased the manor in Wanstead, and he was the part of the first private bankers in England, the East India Company. He planted walnut trees and created ponds and developed the area quite a bit. He pulled down the old manor house and built a structure of great magnificence. A writer said that there were very few houses which rivaled it in England. It was constructed of Portland stone, and it covered an area of 260 feet by 70 feet. He also laid out all the gardens, lakes and canals. An idea of the house, you can pass this around if you like. So that's kind of a picture of the house as it was.
It's not there anymore. It's not here anymore.
No, well, I'll tell you what happened. So all these lakes, everything was beautifully done and very luxurious, and furniture and everything. About a century later, the owner of the property was a Miss Catherine Tilney Long. Nice double-barreled name there. She was one of the richest heiresses in England, and the estate was valued at £80,000 a year. That was the income. So £80,000 a year in those days, you could multiply it probably 50 times, I suppose. But she made a big mistake. She married the Honourable Wellesley, who was deep in debt at the time.
That's so horrible.
In 10 years, he squandered all her money. So in June 1882, his broken-hearted wife had to see all her furniture and contents of the house sold at auction to pay for her husband's debts. A year later, because there wasn't enough money even then, the mansion was pulled down and the material was sold in separate lots. All the materials and the stones and whatever, and everything basically went. He escaped, pursued by his creditors, down the River Thames in a boat. And unfortunately she died 2 years later and left 2 children. So that's sort of the tragedy of this house that disappeared. So there was some other aspects of this forest. There was wild deer were hunted in the forest at one time, because somebody mentioned Richmond Park, and there were wild deer here at one time. The last stag was killed at West Ham, and I mentioned freedom of the forest for cattle as well. There's a lot of wildlife here. If you come here at different times of the year, you see all the different types of birds, and there are also tours. If you look on the website for people that do tours of this park, looking at wildlife and specific areas of interest. So as I said, it was taken over by the Corporation of London, and the park was opened to the public by the Epping Forest Committee in 1882. So not that long ago, in a sense. So what we're going to do now, that's just an outline, is you see this building up here, it's the temple, where it's a very lovely building, and it's got information, more information, and DVDs playing on the park and so on. But what we're going to do is go to another lake further on, come back to the temple, and then walk on our way back after that. And so it should take about, I don't know what the time is now, but another hour to do that. That's right.
So when will you get
other man. Like your husband is.
Separate bank account. I'm sorry. Ruin your life, ruin your family.
She's